So in one sentence, describe what you do, and in another sentence, why you love it. And let's go down the line, starting here.
Okay, I'm a talent manager. I work primarily with actors. I represent a few filmmakers. Why I love it is as someone who also started as an actor, proud union member, I wanted to be the kind of representation that I felt I was looking for.
I'm a talent manager, and what I say for people who are sort of outside of the industry but looking inside and trying to explain our weird job is the way that I see sort of talent management is like you're hiring the CEO of your business and your artistry. And then why I love this job, I'm a very vicarious person, and so I enjoy sort of being attached and in a small way part of other people's dream paths. The people in my life who inspired me the most always sort of like lived for others, and this is my small part of doing that.
And he stole the good stuff to say. Also in talent management, there isn't much that we don't do in terms of advising, counseling, marketing, positioning actors, being in the emotional trenches with you guys, like being inherently vulnerable. This is the longest run-on sentence ever. But basically, like, our job is to be whatever you need us to be and to figure out how to get you to where you want to be. Like, that's a nice way to put that. And then I love people. I love actors. I love making things like come together for everybody. So I wish I had the bandwidth to like help everyone. I don't. Oftentimes we find I'm talking too much. I will be that person on this panel. Anyway, I just love actors, and we'll leave it at that. Ciao.
Yeah, I really want to say I'm the CEO of your demo reel just because I thought that was so good.
There we go.
Yeah, that was such a good line. I'm going to say that for everything. Tell my wife that when that will go.
I get 10%.
That will not go well. I'm an editor. I've worked in this industry in various capacities. I've been a producer, editor, writer, all this kind of stuff. I've done everything. I've always come back to editing every time. And the first job I ever had in Los Angeles was editing demo reels, and I've kept that going ever since. So it's like 20 years of that. And I really like editing because it's like solving a problem. And in this case, the problem is like, and for actors, it's like, how do you really present this actor? How do you get the best out of their material, and how do you get them to the next level of their career? And that's a problem I've just always liked solving.
I'm going to add, I've worked with Joe for 14 years.
Yes.
I've been doing demo reels for over 40 years now. That's all I've really ever done. I haven't been a producer. I did a couple of short films, but as an editor, I just love the challenge of making scenes better on people's reels, like how to reshape everything so the other actors are not in the scene as much. And sometimes it's helping, certain lines that my client doesn't really like in there, how to fix that. And just the helping people. I've always been a people person, and I love when clients tell me their reel got them a job. So,
all right, round of applause. Thank them for being here. We thank you for being here. All right, first thing, how do you view or think of demo reels and clips? Anyone who wants to jump in.
I think that's all kind of managerial stuff. We make those demo reels, but where they're actually used, the tools and how you guys market with them, that's more your
I think you should see every clip that you have sort of in your possession as an arsenal, as a different
These wonderful words.
But as a different sort of way for us to be able to present you for an open opportunity for you to be able to get. And so the breadth and the depth of what you have in your sort of arsenal is one of the most important things, especially for a developing actor. And by that, I don't mean it in a pejorative way, like, oh, you're developmental, no one cares about you. I mean that you need someone in your court on a day-to-day basis to pitch you for every opportunity. The marketplace is not ringing my phone, James's phone, and Tara's phone in order to try to hire you. So you are in this position, and you need to arm us specifically with the best stuff, the most varied stuff of you being your best, not your worst, in a sort of pathway that is suggestive of the types of casting that is the center of mass of what you think that you can book right now until you're not developmental anymore and have a little bit more command of the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Joe, I saw you were wanting to chime in.
Oh, no, it's like that. I do see like the, editorially I look at it and it's like, and it's got to fulfill certain certain parameters, right, to make it work. Like your headshot has to achieve certain things, your reel has to achieve certain things. I kind of, who was it that said like, what makes you take a movie? And he said it was like 3 good scenes and no bad ones. Who was that? You remember that? Like, have you heard that? And that's the way I kind of like think of demo reels. Like it should all be good and it should represent you at your strongest. And it's like how do we make that out of what you have? And so that's a. I do feel like editorially we should know the structures and the editorial context and all that kind of stuff, and like that's all stuff we should be able to bring to it and make it understand that like the psychology of the reel that we're putting together, not just the form, but also like why do you put one scene first? Why do you put the next scene second? Like right, that creates a context through juxtaposition, and that has to be understood as an editor. And so that's something that you also have to bring to it, because putting scenes in a certain order make a difference, and representing the actor in a certain way makes a difference. And the same scene, the same 10 scenes, or that's maybe a lot, same 5 scenes in a different order will have a different result. And so you kind of have to know that, and you know it because you understand editing conventions and context.
What's the bandwidth you think someone has to watch a whole reel?
It kind of depends on. Just asking me, or was it everybody?
Probably more from a casting and producing, directing perspective. How long are they willing to watch?
I'd say sometimes seconds.
Yeah.
But
let's speak to that. So they're going to only look at it as long as they need to look at it to make a decision on yes or no.
Yep.
But as you get further and further in the process, they ask us for more. So I have clients who have 20-minute reels because they have 20 minutes of footage from 8 episodes of work that's outstanding. And so when we're moving into a test phase or trying to convince people like that somebody can do that, like I can go out and like, here's like 3 hours of work that you possibly haven't seen just because of how much media there is. Look how incredible they are. What else do you need to see? And sometimes like this year it was like, we need to see him a little bit sexier. So we're like, all right, let's pull those photos out. And it's like, he's sexy too. But it was, again, it's as frustrated as we are that it's like, we only need to listen to 3 to 5 seconds. That also tells you like how much somebody knows the project they're working on. Like I don't have to be in the room. I can listen to a self-tape and know if it's good.
Yeah.
I've been in that scenario. Actually, I remember I used to work in casting, and one specific casting director would turn around while the actor was reading and be like, I can just hear them telling the truth. And I thought that was fascinating. So excellent point that these buyers, specifically casting directors, are so entrenched on what it is that they're looking for that, they can tell fairly quickly. And it's an added benefit of firepower that if you are sitting on more footage that, presuming you're working with representation, there's like strategic timing on what they're seeing and when they're seeing it.
I just love that you're actually getting feedback and bringing that back to the actor's portfolio. Is that difficult to get that feedback?
From whom?
From casting producers, directors, get feedback on a particular actor's profile and what they're presenting, what their demo reel looks like, what their clips look like, and they actually chime in and let you know, hey, we need to see them more sexy or whatever it is.
I mean, speaking to that one specifically because of where we were in the test, and we were working with the producers who had decided, they're like, this is our cast. Give us everything we need to get them sold to studio and to get them sold to the network. So that's something that happens in in that type of space. But generally, if we're getting auditions for someone, that's our feedback. If a client, again, repeat business, that has to do with the actor, that has to do with the type, that also has to do with their marketing materials. Like sometimes, for whatever reason, a client's reel just isn't working, and we'll just go and be like, hey, we have to re-edit this. The nice thing now is a lot of us can re-edit things. We don't need knowing that we have 5 seconds of attention span. I don't necessarily always need a full demo reel. I can be like, I have this exact clip that's going to show you exactly what I need. Or I have this exact audition that's going to show you something that they don't have yet. Yeah. That's the new thing. That's the newer part of this space with having self-tapes. That's yes, we want to be in the room, but I can also show the body of your work that you've also auditioned for.
And I do have some management companies that have some of their clients have maybe an 8 to 10 minute reel, but then they also have those reels broken up as individual clips on. There's a few different websites that do that, and they can, specifically target well, don't watch the reel because we want you to watch, this particular show where he played the judge or whatever. So I think it's hard for an actor to say, well, what if they only watch 3 to 5 seconds of my reel? Like, what about all this other stuff on the reel? And it just depends. Sometimes they'll watch a 4 or 5 minute reel, and sometimes they'll watch a 10-minute reel if it's something much more, it's a much bigger part. So it's kind of hard to say. You just got to put your best stuff on and hope the order is right. And you can always do 2 or 3 different versions with different order, and so.
Matt, were you about to chime in?
I don't know. I think
Yeah,
there's
you know
a
what?
whole bunch of
Workshop
nuance to,
it with us,
Yeah, there's a whole
okay?
bunch of nuance to this because it really depends on who you are, your position in the marketplace, the role that you're going after, and where you are in the casting process. So if you're someone who's blind submitting or being blind submitted for a role that's an under 5 or a small co-star role, and they look at 3 to 5 seconds of your reel, that's justified because you're probably going to have 3 to 5 seconds maybe on screen. If we're talking about who's going to be the lead of the next Netflix series or HBO series, then chances are someone like the three of us have had to have a long conversation and spun a really beautiful narrative on why you, who maybe the position in the marketplace is down here, deserves a shot at something that's going to potentially change anyone's life who gets it, but especially yours. And the delta between the two is the ground that we have to sort of climb in order to make you viable for that role. So if we're sitting over here, and I'm pointing at him because we used to work together.
Yes.
If we're,
I'm glad you clarified things.
if we sort of sit on the phone with casting directors and we've spun this beautiful tale about how you did this and this and this and your education in the class that you're in, and we have their sort of the momentum for them to watch exactly what we send to them, they'll hit play on whatever we send to them.
Yeah.
So for me, it just better be really effing good. Yeah. And it better be towards the role that we are aspiring and trying to get and sort of weave. And so
Agreed.
it's hard for me to say like a carte blanche sort of, you need this and this and this and this and this. And that's why I sort of said, you need everything so that we have the ability to pick and choose exactly what we think could be good for that role at that period of time based on where you are in the casting process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, actors that have you folks in their corner, they could be considered very lucky, right? And some people don't have reps,
Yep.
right? And you're submitting yourself and they don't have someone to pitch for them, or they have a rep that just isn't pitching. And the actor doesn't know that they're not getting pitched, right? Show of hands. Experience this. Okay. Yeah, I'm speaking to your heart now on that one, right? Oy. So on that note, how long would you give your current material on whatever platform, like Actors Access, for example, before you would switch it out? And then is there a way to sort of get it checked or get feedback, or do you have any notes on that, or any thoughts about what could be potentially tweaked, or just
I think
advice
if you're looking
along
at
that
the
realm?
efficacy of your self-tapes, or the self-tapes or auditions that you're submitting, and you have representation, you don't need to look any further. About 10 years ago, when self-taping became the majority of the pre-reads, that sort of casting process sort of took over, you guys got an immediate casting director with immediate casting feedback. I think we spend the first couple hours of our day watching self-takes and takes of our clients and their work. We know exactly what we're sending in, whereas 10 years ago, you would just get a call from your client after they walked out and say, oh my God, I did such an amazing job. And then you would call the casting director, who you knew because of the 8 to 10 hour workday, and they would only see people every 20 minutes, exactly how many people they saw that day and when. And so when I got to get on the phone with that casting director and he or she went to their notes and said, oh, Angela, she did such a good job, but she missed a beat on scene too, that was the tangible feedback I could call my clients and give them. And it was incredibly validating in certain ways because they had that, oh, this is what the decision maker or the gatekeeper said about my work in that specific day. Now, the first line of defense is, are you turning in, and there's this crazy, amazing Australian agent, and I love, and he's very old school, and he used to say at the very beginning of my career, he said, every audition needs to grab you by the eyeballs. Because if you're hitting play and your representative who wants you to get the job, who wants it to be amazing because he or she has signed you and wants you to be that person who you guys both have aspired to be, if they hit play and aren't excited about what you've done and they represent you and potentially make 10%, then your feedback, if you don't get anything from your reps, is probably it wasn't an amazing tape. Sorry.
And I would add, for those that don't have representation, I think you should have somewhere in your circle, in your network, a handful of people whose taste you highly regard, highly respect. Ideally, they have a vantage point that makes sense for them to be reviewing your materials, and make sure that it speaks to them. So like, for example, for those of you that are submitting on Actors Access and LA Casting, if you're not getting traction there, that's kind of a starting point. You know, it also is dependent on what you're submitting on. But be sure that if you can't get the kind of feedback that you can get from a working professional being your representative, that somewhere in your network you've cultivated that. And I'd say at least 3 to 5 people, and truly dig into that work and say, what's the feedback here? Would you watch this as a filmmaker, as a casting director, as a producer, as a fellow working actor? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, that's an amazing tip. I'm actually going to turn to Joe and Paul about. No, I got you. On this one first, let's talk about length, and let's talk about where you cut in and potentially start a reel or a clip. You know, is it the climactic scene, part of the scene, or, you know, where would you start, and how long would a demo reel be, and how long would a clip be?
I think we both probably have varied takes on that, but
Great.
Yeah.
usually for me, if I've got about a 4-minute reel with maybe 6 or 7 pieces, that's kind of good. If you get the best 30 to 40 seconds of a scene. I'm not into these 1-minute montage-y kind of reels where you can't tell what the hell it was. But if you don't start right at the most critical crying part of a dramatic scene, but you have a little bit of a build and you get out of it way before the end of that moment, right when it kind of peaks, go into something funny. You can tell by watching stuff where you've seen enough. It's usually around 30 to 40 seconds. What do you think, Joe? Somewhere in there?
Yeah, that's typically a sweet spot, 30 to 40 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it can go up to a minute. It really does depend on the scene.
Great. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But you also, you know, this is also like the end product, right? When you've pulled out all the other actors as much as possible, you know, you leave them for structural support. You can't. They have to, you know, they have to say stuff to you. Yeah. Acting is reacting, right? No jump cuts. I've seen those before. People jump cut reels.
It's bad.
But it's like I always start with the strongest thing. You kind of have to. You just have to start with your strongest thing. And I usually kind of like a process. Like the first one is the strongest, and then I usually like to find something that's good that juxtaposes the first one and kind of create some range right away. If you got like, you know, an interrogation scene followed by another interrogation scene, we haven't really learned that much about you. There may be nuances in those two scenes, but it's like one after the other just feels like too much. If you can vary like drama and comedy, like at least in a certain tone, that tends to be good, and it keeps the watcher going. And it keeps it interesting. And so ultimately, it's like I don't care that much about the overall length of a reel, as long as the scenes themselves are tight and you get in and out. You know, you start on you, end on you as much as possible. You know, you keep the scenes tight, you keep them moving. Because the truth is, as our managers have already said, it's like they're going to stop watching when they want to stop watching. There's really every reel is a speed reel, unfortunately, because they're done when they're done. And so it's like if you are watching, so the more you can hook them in with this thing that like moves, the better off you are. I mean, that said, it's like, you know, don't be crazy. I mean, it's like you don't necessarily like. Sometimes they'll see it if they see like a 10-minute runtime, that might be like, ugh. You know, it's like and not just because they think you don't have 10 minutes of good material, but because they're like, well,
it's annoying that
and it's also like you haven't edited the scenes down is probably what they think, right? Because like it's so long because you've got like 3-minute long scenes in there, which tends to be what happens. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about before about how lengthy. Like I did a reel for Brian Cox one, right? It's like 12 minutes long. Don't do that. That's not for everybody, right? It's but you know, it was for him, for his purposes. So
I was going to say though, so one thing with that though, so when we're editing, like, yes, you want things to move along, but don't lose the breathing of the scene. Like often it's like, I just cut. And I'm like, the breathing is what really makes your work sing, especially like if you get that opportunity. Of course, if you're doing, you know, a guest star or a co-star and you're just facilitating things, there's not going to be that breathing room. You can make it a little bit more your scene without making it look super obvious. Sometimes you're like, oh, they're the most important person in Castle. Oh God, that's a really dated reference.
It's not so bad.
I didn't even watch that show. That's bad. Oh my God, that was like year one.
I think Hardcastle and McCormick would be more of a dated reference. Castle's not so bad. I'd still put a castle on a reel if it
I'm like, I don't even know why that one came out. But again, if you look like the star in a show that's like, and you've got like 3 lines, it's like maybe they cut that creatively. But don't miss out on the opportunities where the work can breathe. And that's like, sometimes you're like, is it boring? Sometimes, but sometimes it's really deep and you're like, whoa, look what they did in that. But I mean,
I would agree with that.
right. Like we love it when we have that. Now, is that fun to watch? Like sometimes, like there's something to be said with like, kind of what I do is I'm like, if I'm bored, I'm done. So like when I'm editing, I'm like, I'm bored and I'm bored and I'm bored. And it's really sad that my attention span is that short because
I think everyone's is.
Yeah.
it's bad. It's just like, like, and I do that in reading, I do that in everything in TV watching, but like editors now, what you have to cut. Like I was watching Fences and I was like, wow, I forgot what it was like to have a scene that didn't have montages connecting it, keeping my brain like engaged. I was like, wow, I forgot about this.
I have this great client named David Clennon, who I'm still working with, and he had an episode of Barney Miller. It's really fun. He used to recur as different characters on Barney Miller, and he had this one scene as Jesus. And the scene was 4 minutes long, and there was no edits in it. It was just ensemble. The cast were just fucking brilliant. Fish, all these guys, And so back in the day, it was different. Nowadays, you kind of gotta keep it cutting a bit. But I agree with you. If there's a good moment to hold on, that's on your client. Yeah, hold on it for a little bit.
I think it's a matter of taste and what the production is, who shot it. I mean, if it's like a scene out of a Chris Nolan film and you're driving the scene, you probably want to let that scene cook. 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever. I'm very much a fan of, I like footage from each project. I'll make a demo reel depending on market position of that actor, but if they have the credits and they've been leads or they've had really strong supporting scenes, I like having footage from each project to show dynamic, to show arc. It is interesting on the cutting 30, 45 seconds. I think, again, it's a point of view and it's a matter of taste. Does the scene, have we gotten enough out of the scene? Because, depending who directed the scene, the beats might be repeating. You really need to assess, if the scene is just beautifully executed, beginning, middle, end, I would encourage you to probably keep that scene, particularly if you're driving it. Or if it's a great tennis match between you and the other actor.
I would say those are averages, 30, 40, right? Because I agree with what you're saying, because it's like reels are decontextualized by nature, right? You as actors cannot earn in a demo reel what you earn in a show. You cannot get that dramatic moment at the end of it that like brings everything to a point that like you've earned something. All you can do is say, do I believe this? That's all that you can get across in a demo reel. You can't earn anything. So as a result of that, do I believe this scene? And if I have a scene that needs to be slow and I've cut it fast, I don't believe it anymore. And so you have to like kind of let those things breathe and make it work. And these are, it's contingent on what the material is, right? But and that's why having edited for a long time is helpful, right? Because I can get the sense of what can come out and what can't, and I edit TV shows during the day, right? That's like my main gig. And it's like, even then it's like, we're always like pulling stuff out, like with, very seasoned showrunners and very seasoned, like, people, directors. And we're like, all right, let's see what this looks like when we pull this out. And we're like, okay, that scene can live without that beat. And then another one, you're like, nope, couldn't. Right? So that's the stuff that you have to figure out as you go along.
What if an actor has a credit for something, but they did not get their footage? Does that directly impact their portfolio that they're presenting? Because you said you would love to have footage from everything that's on their resume in their reels and clips. But what if they didn't get footage? I mean, is that frowned upon or looked at?
Was it good?
Do we want it?
But in all seriousness,
How indie was the film team?
People don't
Sorry,
get,
do you mean
get
they didn't
footage.
get the footage they were cut out of the show, or they just never could get a hold of a copy
or
of the
both,
show?
or both.
Well, if they're cut out of it, that's up to them.
That's tough.
Editor and
Yeah.
director and stuff like that. And it's possible a lot of times clients of mine have been able to get footage.
Yeah.
Or it used to be in the old days, you would wait for it to be out on DVD and you would wait for the deleted scenes and then you could do that. But they don't do that anymore. And
I got some unaired footage for a client. It was an unaired pilot and we were able to get the footage, but that was just making a call to the producers to get it.
that's the only way to do that.
Yeah, if it's streaming somewhere, sometimes like I have a client that's in Australia and we were having a tricky time getting access to where it was airing, but someone knows where to get that. So I just knew where to make the call to pull that.
Probably a little bit more for like indie projects and maybe student films and people starting out.
Like
They might
sell it
have
as a second coming,
you know.
until it comes out. It's like you might have 2 scenes in something, but I sell it as like the greatest indie that's ever been developed, and I'm like, look how amazing they are. I'm like,
Again, I think
Nice.
the most important thing is are you incredibly good in it, or does it show like your voice, your essence, and your sort of artistry through this work? Whether it's a student film, whether it's like a short scene, whether it's 3 minutes on a Nolan film, the most important thing is that when you convince someone to hit play, that it shows exactly who you want out there in the marketplace. So I don't care as much if you're bartender number 6 on 14 things in a row and your resume looks like an impressive sort of monster of momentum, because eventually I'm not going to be able to pitch a demo reel of 6 seconds clips of you asking if you want a cherry in the drink or not. Like you're going to eventually have to like level up, and then sometimes it's way more beneficial to send what I call like internal momentum and external momentum. So external momentum is the thing that everyone sees. It's the TV shows, the films, the sort of material that gets exhibited for the audience. Internal momentum is the stuff that we use to say, this person just tested for this show. He or she didn't get it, but look at the audition that they did to impress HBO, CBS, Warner Brothers, whatever it is. They want to watch that piece of content even though it's not produced. And what I would say is you should treat that stuff as special as potentially some of the credits that have showed your external momentum, because for us and the buyers and the sort of sellers that we sort of deal with on a day-to-day basis, they'll take that more seriously as long as you're presenting it with the level of intentionality that it is.
That's fine if you've got a manager that sets that up, but if you're doing a demo reel and it's all just auditions, people aren't going to know you just were at home shooting auditions. So
That's what I want to
tricky.
transition
And I do
into,
think that it's
using
nice.
auditions.
I'm not saying you shouldn't use pieces of self tapes and reels. I use them all the time, and there's some great moments, but without someone behind the scenes saying, "Oh, this was just watched by some producer in HBO," it's got to just be its own true moment of work, and it could have just been you shooting it in your garage. So,
And it needs to stand out on its own. And again, like to use the word taste again, like really getting, I call it like your advisory board. If you don't have representation, like these people really need to give you that feedback and say, if you are getting this cold, would you be of interest? Would you be intrigued? Would you want to meet this person, call this person in? Interestingly, I had a meeting with a British actor. He was actually lead of a show, but the show hadn't come out yet. So he had no footage yet, really. And his agent sent a monologue tape, and it was actually edited, and it was fascinating. I think he must have used 2 or 3 cameras. So it started off wide, and it reminded me of like, I think what some casting directors, at least back in the day, used to do, where they'd start maybe more 3/4, and then as the scene starts to reach its apex, if this is a meaty scene, they move into a close-up. And so he cut into a close-up. Again, this was a monologue, and I was like, okay, like usually it's tricky me watching a monologue on camera. I like to experience things like that on stage, but it just kind of reminded me of how you can, without representation, get dynamic on your own and make something interesting that speaks on your behalf. I think that's another word that floats around in our business a lot, outside of the other adjectives that I know get used, but interesting is one of them. And it's like, what's something that would make someone curious about you? And sometimes, I can't get this quote out of my head that Matt just said about this agent being like, it's got to grab you by your eyeballs. I feel that way too, because it's you, how you're presenting yourself, but also I get taken in by like lighting, and is there grain on the film? If it's shiny, does this work with the material you're doing? It's kind of the whole presentation. At the end of the day, we're in a very visual business. So like it's you being interesting as well as just kind of the overall picture. So yeah, all this to say, with regards to self-tapes and things, I personally, in my perspective, I don't like a demo reel of just self-tapes, but I do believe in self-tapes on their own in that, again, if you're looking for representation, you can at least take some creative liberties in terms of like, if you're going to shoot it in a garage, please use an interesting background. Please make sure you're lit in a way that is flattering for you. And
especially the sound.
And the sound needs to be crisp. We need to hear your words. We shouldn't be having to lean in or have to rely on headphones to hear your sound. Again, all these things, run it past your advisory board. Make sure it hits A's with everyone.
I think that's a great idea, and I do think that probably at least 50% of the time when I've finished a reel, it goes through a group of friends, obviously the agent and the manager, but not only that, 2 or 3 trusted friends, and we'll always go back and do some revisions. Either they're minor or switching the sequence of things or a little bit of a trim here and there, but you can't nail it the very first time you finish a reel. You got to show it to some people and get some feedback. That's really important.
I think this is all really important to bring up because we have actors that are ranging from just starting out to seasoned, and some of the actors that are either just starting out or they're frustrated because they're still developmental. Is the budget, because you're spending money on shooting reels or edit and then editing and then the upload cost to your profiles. So being able to streamline and be picky and figure out exactly what you need to do, because sometimes an actor's budget is not that big. So to that note, what are the most important things that should be up there? Are there most common roles? Like, let's say you're just starting out and you're wanting to get that co-star role as the bartender or the waiter or or a doctor or a nurse or a lab tech or any of those. What are the most common things of all those particular archetypes that should be on an actor's profile who's really trying to break into those beginner roles?
The exact type of casting that they want. So if you went to med school and dropped out after 2 years because you wanted to sort of pursue acting or this type of artistry, and you know that you are going to be able to artificially compete at a much higher level than the average person trying to sort of spew medical jargon in a way that people who might not have had that sort of formal education would, then the easiest way to pierce through the noise of the difficulty of our marketplace right now is exactly with that. So understand who you are right now. And then, of course, as your career continues to grow, as you move through the developmental phase of your actor or as your career, you can start to expand the field of view of how the marketplace starts to see you. But don't try to go, hey, I can do this, and this. Great. But what are you best at right now? And then like a trunk of a tree, you can start to branch off. But what's the trunk? And make sure that whether you're submitting to representation or casting or self-submitting, that you're making sure that people see you for your superpower, for like what you are amazing at, and that you know that if you're in that casting room or doing a tape and that you're sort of looking to the left and to the right of you, that you've got that X factor over everyone else, and then say it with your chest and then put it on tape and then send it to whomever. And then what I would say from just earlier real quick is like, don't divorce yourself from the responsibility of marketing yourself. We were talking earlier about the importance of business and marrying the art and business. And until you have someone who is willing to take 10% of your business to take over these roles, you need to be in charge of it yourself. So if you're not banging down doors, or if you're not trying to take time during acting class to get these scenes on tape, like how many of you have an iPhone or a phone that has a camera? Mm-hmm. The barriers of entry for our business have never been lower. And while we were sort of complaining earlier about how casting, gets all of these tapes, that means that they're looking at least at 5 seconds for you and your work. And so you have opportunities, but it's much harder to get. So you've got to be ravenous in your sort of desire to want to break in. And for those people who are, it's never been more equitable. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So then that footage shot on an iPhone is good enough.
To me.
So I'll add to that. So
Please.
We work I know how hard you guys work to get a demo reel and to get a student film, which they're student films, and sometimes they're great and sometimes they're just, I don't know how they pass the class. At USC, I'm like, oh, bless you guys. That's a really expensive
Who were your parents?
I know. I was like, whoo. But put together the best demo reel you can. But here's the thing you can send me tapes of you working on like doing a self tape, do a monologue, do something, show me what you can do. And oftentimes I will ask, or if you don't have it, I'll send you sides, because I'm like, there's something here. I don't immediately know who you are right now. I think you might be this. Yes. And I will send that to see if you've got it. Because like, again, like none of us are ever signing, but we're kind of always looking. It's like dogs. You're never ever looking for a dog, but you kind of end up with a lot of dogs. And then and you love them. Like, how did I end up with a parrot? And a tortoise. So like I end up with, anyway. So we're always like, we love you guys so much. So if your demo reel isn't quite getting it done, it doesn't all like depend on a demo reel anymore. Because again, speaking to barriers to entry, like you can be creative, but definitely like watch TV, watch films, see what's being made. Like when Portlandia was coming out, everybody was like, I love Portlandia. And I'm like seeing all these tapes for Portlandia. I'm like, guys, there's only one, and there's not 100 roles that are going to be series regs on that. Like you'd love it, but like definitely like know where you fit in the market. Also be really true to your, like really understand where you are in the market and not who you want to be. Like so often I have people who come in and they're like, their whole entire career is this really great looking, like super clean cut, approachable. And then they walk in, they're like, I want to do drug roles. I'm like, that's gonna be hard. I had one client who came in with dreadlocks, but his entire career was suits and lawyers. I'm like, dude, I will sell you in this, but they're not going to buy you in that. Like that's a separate conversation because they should. But in terms of where the market is, you're going to go out for the druggy guys and you're really not that guy. Like, and I hate this. And we'll do the fight. But anyway, just know who you are and market yourself in the best way possible.
Embrace being typecast is good.
Yeah. Also, we only get 10%. You guys still have to do 90. Like that doesn't mean like don't do anything. My reps have to do everything. If nothing's happening, it's because of my reps. I'm like, you guys are also helping us, like who you meet, who you've had lunch with, who you happen to bump into, and you're like, hey, wow, I kind of ran into this person and they did actually like me. Those things are helpful.
I've seen, but I've actually like seen this. I'm thinking of like I have a client, like a longtime client, who didn't want to embrace the typecasting. He kept getting cast as a thug, right? And so his reel was like a bunch of thugs. And then at some point he goes, no, I want to go a new direction. And it's like, let's re-edit this reel. And we re-edited his reel, and it definitely took his career a new direction. He didn't work at all. And so we were like, okay, maybe we need to go back to this. And what was the key for him? To get the thug role on like a big show. That's what it was. He leaned into it until he got the big show. And actually now his career, he's doing all kinds of roles. He managed to break out of it, but he had to get to that level first. And once he had that credit, it enabled him to do some other kind of stuff. So he was able to do it, but it kind of took leaning into it first.
And, I know I was saying earlier, this is a very visual business, but the way that I work, and Matt was speaking to this as well earlier, I believe very much strongly in what someone's essence is. And like, that is what's undeniably you, no matter how much you try to dress or change something up. Someone can just have edge in a suit. Like they're the person that is going to hit you, boiler room style, or they just have something about them. And that's interesting. So again, going back to like what's interesting when you're like putting together that material, I think there's a way to strategically set yourself up so you're not just so that you're not boxing yourself in too much. I think if you focus on making your material, your demo reels or your self-tapes lean into what truly your essence is, again, something else your advisory board can weigh in on. How do you see me? What do you think, when you first met me, what was my energy? Where would you see me at? And just take a poll and then be like, okay, what's an elevated way of presenting this? There is you can always do straightforward, and I get it. Like sometimes you just want an in and you're like, can you just see me as the doctor or as the nurse or as the cop? But we have to give credit to the buyers, and particularly the casting directors that hire you. They're very creative people. They can see something. Their job is to see you for who you are and where they think you can authentically live in some of these parts before you can get to a place of actually being like, well, I actually have range. So I would encourage you all to, those who don't have representation yet are like, taking those strides, like be thinking a lot about where your essence sits, especially if you're thinking, okay, I really want to break out into a network procedural, or I want to break in. I belong in the YA space. Okay, so what is kind of your core personality, and how does that kind of interestingly translate in the material that you have to present?
And it's not bad if you're not something. Like, I've never been called chill in my life. And so it's like when an actor comes up and tries to say like, oh, I can do this. And I was like, not from any of the experiences I've ever had with you.
Yeah, but like ball buster in charge is an energy
That's
too.
not
Yeah.
bad though. So
Yeah.
instead of seeing it as like, oh, this will reduce sort of the amount of opportunities that I'll have if they found out that I'm not chill. It's no, we're getting closer and closer to making sure that the opportunities that you're getting are more aligned with the things that you're going to book, which is good.
What about the age of clips? Let's say, for example, you are usually that ball buster, take charge, leader type character as a lawyer and a doctor and a nurse and, running the lab or whatever. But you have stuff that is older, but it's so good. How old is it before it's not good to use anymore?
I think Hollywood has such an amazing recency bias that I actually do have a pretty strong opinion on this. I think that you have to lead with the thing that's the most recent and impactful.
100% agree.
Yeah, you have to definitely lead with the new stuff, but you got to fucking Seinfeld, excuse my language, tag the end of the reel with it. I mean, if there's certain shows, I think, that are timeless shows that are okay to keep on towards the end of reels, but don't put them near the beginning because you were on an episode of Seinfeld. That's just goes as a button at the very end of a reel. You got to put the new stuff right at the top.
I always tell people, can they hire this person? That's the answer to me. Is like, how old can they hire this person? I mean, if you don't look like this anymore, you probably shouldn't do it. And if you have Seinfeld
that's the barometer.
that's it. If that person can't be hired anymore, why is this person on your reel? Like you are now a different person, right? I have put people like when it's Seinfeld or something like that. You put it on like I put it on like as historical reference. Like I did a reel for like Bruce McGill, right, who was on Animal House. That Animal House clip is still at the end of his reel, but it's just for fun.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. It's just for fun. I'm trying to think. I've done a couple of those where it's like I had like big actors from Adrienne Barbeau. I did a reel for her, right? We have some stuff at the end of hers from like Escape from New York and stuff like that, but it's historical reference.
Right.
It's not higher, 1977 Adrienne Barbeau.
No, exactly. Yeah, but it's entertainment at the end of a reel and shows historicity. But yeah, you can't put it near the top. That would just be sad.
And you,
I was going to add, so not just the like a recency bias, but also our technology has changed so much. So what used to look good like 10 years ago, you have to update your footage now. So always when you're grabbing reel, grab the highest quality version that you can possibly get. It'll still probably suck in 5 years, but you're going to get more mileage out of it than if you grab it at like 720, because 720 like a year and a half from now is not going to be the same 720.
You know what else though? But on that same token, sometimes a show like ER or something gets remastered and it looks amazing, and then it's like a clip that you thought didn't look usable anymore. Now it is. You just like
and you still look like that.
And you still look like
Exactly.
that, right? But I've seen that happen plenty of times when stuff gets up-res to like 4K or HD or something, like where it wasn't before. You're like, oh my gosh, look at that! Like we can actually use this. Yeah, so it can.
I mean, we've done that with clients who have like careers expand 20 years, and we're showing the breadth and the depth of their work. We'll have them go and get everything like redone and like, hey, go pull the 4K or the 1080 or whatever on it. So we have it again for those situations when I have to have as much tape as I possibly can to have as big of an arsenal, great word, that I can possibly have to get my client what they want. So if I'm trying to push them over the edge for a series reg, if I'm trying to push them over the edge for, a lead in a feature film or whatever, I'm going to use everything I possibly can find to get it done.
So a lot of you've mentioned focus in terms of what are you good at, or what are you right now? The requirement has been always have a comedic reel and a dramatic reel. So I'm speaking specifically to that, right? Is that still sort of the requirement, is to make sure you have a comedic reel and a dramatic reel, and whatever your typecasting is right now in both of those spaces?
I would say so. I've had actors I've pitched that have only had drama, and the casting director's like, I think they're great, but can they do comedy? So I would say so. And obviously some dramatic scenes might have some levity to them or feel comedic or darkly comedic. And, I think that can go either or. I think is it truly funny? If it actually makes people laugh, if your advisory board thinks it's hilarious, then by all means, put that on your comedic footage. But yeah, I'd say keep the two separate just for efficiency purposes. You're submitting to representation. That's how I'm going to look at it and kind of assess, where your skill set is.
Were you about to chime in?
No, I mean, I know I have done many general reels that have both. They're the most fun to do, obviously, because they show the most range. And then you also have a drama reel and a comedy reel. But I think that when I've seen people, when I just look them up on IMDb, like a new client of mine, and they just have one reel that pops up, that's oftentimes both things put together, because no one that's on IMDb is going to want to go through that thing that says videos and click on that and then go to look at different things. They're just going to see whatever pops up. So I think if you have one that you can mix it together and make it fairly short,
And to be frank,
important to do.
To be frank, sometimes you don't have the material to support two reels. So you just have one good general reel, and that's going to work better. I mean, it's going to work better for you than it's just trying to extract something that doesn't necessarily work. So, I mean, a lot of clients that I have can't really put two good separate reels together like that. If you can, that's great, and it's worthwhile. If you
So on that note, in a clip versus a reel, are you just going to have one scene of you as a lawyer, or for example, or are you going to take 3 examples of 3 different times you played a lawyer in a clip because you're pitching that client to play a lawyer on a show? I'm just using that as an easy example.
You got to use what you have, right?
Okay.
So if you've played a lawyer 3 times, you're clearly pretty good at legal jargon. You're pretty
Right.
that whippy, snappy back and forth gotcha
Right.
sort of moment, and so that could
Making that
constitute
clip
its
longer.
own reel. But if you're trying to get something different and you only have the one thing, then that's what you need to use. But I'm a clip person. I think that the clips that you send create a reel sort of in the buyer's mind of who you are. And so I would rather send, hey, this is a reel from something that's 10 years ago that's pretty iconic that they were amazing in, but here's a self-tape from something that they got a call back. They met Ben Stiller on. They did this, they did that, to try to create that kind of energy around getting them to watch it, because that, whether it was self-tape or whether it was something you put together in your garage, is going to be the thing that's going to be a little bit easier to try to get someone to engage on you and your material.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I wasn't sure if we really answered your question, and I don't really know the answer to that question. If you have like a lawyer clip, and a doctor clip that has 1 or 2 quick pieces from other shows put together, I always thought that a clip was just one particular thing, but I'm not sure about that. That's
right.
a good sort of.
I mean, the perspective may be that you just think of okay, this is my lawyer clip and it's one scene, and here's an example of me being a lawyer, and you just pick your best one.
Right.
That's
what I normally have thought. Clips
right.
were,
So that's
but I
interesting.
sort of like this
There's
idea about
different
doing it. It's more
perspectives.
editing for me.
Yeah, I would say choose the best one too. I can definitely see Matt's perspective in it,
Yeah.
especially if maybe they're all 3 very strong. But I would take it a step further and be like, are you repeating the same beat? If it's 3 of the same scenes where you're you're cross-examining someone, it's again, think about, does someone want to watch you do this 3 times versus one's cross-examination, one's going back and forth with a colleague, one's you're consulting with your client, then sure, you're an attorney, but now we're getting to see just different beats, different sides of your range.
And then clearly they're
lawyer.
experienced at being an attorney, so that sort of.
I once did a really great clip that was just a legal clip where someone played all the different parts. They were the judge, the attorney, and the witness, and they asked themselves questions. And they
as a clip.
universe.
Wait, as a clip or as a reel?
As just a fun little. It was a clip we did is just more like for entertainment.
That probably has more views than that person's reel.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, one final question, then we're going to open it up to Q&A. Slate shots. Does everybody remember Slate shots requirements on Actors Access, where you have a clip that's attached to your headshot, and the word on the street is like, that filters my audition up higher to the top? What's everyone on this panel's perspective on that? Who wants to chime in on this?
Well, they know I have a strong opinion on this.
Yes, and I want to
they
hear it, and
tested the
they
waters,
deserve
and they're
it.
like, "Hey, we might ask about this." Like, I have a very, very strong opinion here. So we, at my company, we don't use Slate shots. It's not how we market our actors. We have actually found, we signed a client. The client had Slate shots for every single photo they had. They had a lot of photos, and the moment we took their Slate shots down, we could get them out. Before that, they were hardly going out. And when I was talking with a friend of mine in casting, I was like, hey, when you're looking through submissions, are you looking at reels or are you looking at Slate shots? And they're like, oh, it just depends. Sometimes I'll pull a Slate shot and sometimes I will pull a reel. And generally speaking, most of your work is, well, I really hope it's better than a Slate shot. I just really do. So, and as far, like, I'm just going to also speak to the algorithm. Like, no one booked the lead on a series from a Slate shot. I'm sorry. It's just never happened. Like, that ignores every person who made calls. That ignores your work. That ignores all the great things that you did. Like the algorithm isn't what makes this happen. Yes, it can definitely like get you up there, but I certainly, again, we had clients on our two maybe, and we're like, get rid of those things quickly. It's not how we market them. It's not how we position you. We didn't personally find it to be like super helpful. So like, and if I'm sending you in for a comedy, or like it's a drama, but I needed somebody with some energy, and so you're smiley and you do a multicam Slate for a drama, I'm like, oh, I just shot myself in the foot. You know, like, I don't need that. I've got your work.
I would just say, as just a counterpoint to that, it's an opportunity to show your personality. And if you go over the top, of course, it's going to be cheesy and it's going to be bad. But let's say you're auditioning for like True Detective or something, and the tone of that is very dark and very grim. And you have this interrogation scene or something, and then at the very end of it, because we're no longer in the room as much as we used to, it's not like you're walking into the room, you're warming up, you're shaking everyone's hand, you're saying hi, they get to see the natural energy and essence that we all care about so much. And then you drop into the character in the work. That's the 1 4-second opportunity at the end of something to kind of give it to them. And so I think as like a Slate shot is something that's generic, that is like at the end of every sort of audition that gets tagged on. Probably, I completely agree with you. But if it is sort of an opportunity at the end of a big audition that you're really proud of and you want to sort of show a different angle in an organic, authentic way, I think it's kind of a positive thing. I've had people definitely not book jobs, but definitely be like, oh, they're that too? And then it kind of shows the range of that person.
Do you mean as a Slate as opposed to a Slate shot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So break down the
two
Slate
different
shot.
things, yeah.
They click on the picture and a video comes up. And you're like, hey, my name is Terra Weiler.
No.
The horror.
I would agree. It's the way I like to market my actors. I like to sell less is more sometimes, create some intrigue. Who are you? How can we get them to know you? There's who they're getting to know in your work. Sometimes I think a Slate might do more than what is needed, or have casting get to a quick decision and be like, oh, yeah, maybe not. So I agree with Matt in that, I've had some, and it has to be done in good taste, but I've had some actors find clever ways to button their audition to say, just in case you needed to see a little something else in this character, you do that in your Slate that is at the tail end of an audition.
Not a Slate shot.
Right. That's two.
But a
different
Slate shot for me personally, marketing wise, I think it just doesn't allow me to market you in a focused way, and I don't respond to them when I see them.
I love this. You guys, amazing group. All right, let's give them a round of applause and open it up for Q&A.